Mirror Talk Episode 3, The Apology Loop. When sorry becomes survival, welcome back to Mirror Talk, the language of the nervous system. I'm grateful you're here, giving time and attention to what I call the quietest parts of communication. The tones beneath our words, the pauses between them, and the stories our bodies tell before the mind translates. If you've journeyed with me through earlier episodes, you'll know that Mirror Talk isn't a series about perfecting speech. It's about listening differently. It's about learning the nervous system's own dialect, the signals of safety, fear, and connection that shape every conversation we have with others and with ourselves. This project sits within a wider body of my work, the inversiverse, the linguiverse, the body knows, the shadow spectrum, and the unfiltered human on the fringe, each exploring different dimensions of awareness, from perception and language to emotion and embodiment. But here, in Mirror Talk, we bring those threads into lived, everyday moments. This is the space where theory meets experience and awareness becomes practice. In our first episode, The First Word, we explored how the earliest language we learned, often at home or school, formed the emotional architecture of our identity, the simple phrases that shaped our sense of safety, belonging, and permission to speak. In the second, The Silent Treatment, we explored absence, how silence, exclusion, and emotional withdrawal create a language of their own. Today we enter a subtler terrain, one many of us know intimately, though we rarely question it. Apology. Specifically, the apology loop, those habitual, reflexive, often unnecessary sorries that slip out before we've even thought, the kind that exist not to repair but to prevent. On the surface, sorry sounds like empathy. It carries the texture of care. But when repeated too often, it can become something else entirely, a shield, a script, or a symptom of a nervous system wired to seek safety through self-blame. This episode, The Apology Loop, when sorry becomes survival, is about understanding how sorry can shift from sincerity to strategy, from accountability to appeasement, and how we can reframe it through awareness, maturity, and embodied integrity. Because apology, like every word, has layers. In its healthiest form, it's a bridge, a gesture of repair and humility that restores connection. But when it becomes a reflex, it can shrink us. It can turn every interaction into a performance of guilt, where we rush to smooth conflict, suppress truth, and sacrifice authenticity to keep others calm. In many ways, sorry is a mirror of our developmental story. As children, we're often told to apologize before we understand why. Say sorry, don't talk back. Be polite. We learn that harmony depends on compliance, that to be loved is to be pleasing, and that discomfort must be erased quickly, even at the cost of truth. Over time, those lessons become scripts. We grow into adults who apologize for taking up space, for having needs, for being misunderstood, for being ourselves. The apology becomes less about what we've done, and more about who we believe we are, inherently wrong, too much, too loud, too late. But an apology isn't supposed to erase you. True apology, mature apology, isn't about collapsing into guilt. It's about standing in accountability. It's not about pleasing others. It's about aligning with your own integrity. That distinction took me years to understand. In my younger days, I apologized often, feeling false notes. The mirror flipped. Others apologize to us, yet something feels off. The phrasing fits, but the melody falters. Our chest tightens, breath shortens, signals of incongruence. The mirror neuron network detects a mismatch between word and embodiment. The mind may wish to forgive. The body withholds trust. I once overrode those cues, granting instant absolution to preserve harmony. Growing self-respect recalibrated that reflex. Now I listen with my whole system, tone, eyes, timing, subsequent action. Without coherence, sorry is semantics. The cost of courtesy chronic apology erodes presence. Each unnecessary sorry diminishes the sense of rightful space. What begins as kindness mutates into invisibility. We risk teaching others and ourselves that our existence is an inconvenience. Liberation starts with noticing frequency and motive. Replace reflex with breath. Pause, sense, choose. Responsibility deserves words. Existence does not. The dual mirror of repair. Every apology reflects two interiors. For the speaker, state of regulation, capacity for ownership. For the receiver, readiness to reopen trust. Real reconciliation emerges only when both systems align in safety. So the work is twofold, to offer remorse congruently and to discern when acceptance is possible. Anything less becomes repetition, not repair. A practice of awareness. Next time sorry forms on your lips, trace its root. Is it accountability? Speak it steadily, low, direct. Is it anxiety? Breathe, soften shoulders, replace with clarity. Thank you for your patience. I'd like to add something. Notice bodily response. Expansion signals truth. Contraction signals fear. Over time, this awareness rewires the loop, teaching the system that authenticity can coexist with safety. The mirror moment. The apology loop is not a flaw to fix, but a language to decode. Each reflex sorry marks a crossroads between survival and sincerity. By pausing inside that moment, we glimpse the child who learned that love required diminishment, and the adult now capable of choosing otherwise. From here, we move into the body itself: posture, tone, breath, the grammar beneath our speech. In the next element, we'll translate these cues and explore how the Fawn reflex scripts our sentences long before we speak. State reflection: the Fawn reflex and the language of safety. Beneath the word before every sorry, there's a state. The nervous system speaks first, the mouth follows. Words are often the final translation of a physiological story that began in the body seconds earlier: a tightening of the chest, a hitch in breath, a subtle folding of posture. These are the micro-movements of appeasement, small gestures that whisper I mean no harm. When I began studying my own apologies, not their content, but their texture, I found that most were not born in the mind, but in the body. The decision to speak came long after the decision to submit. The apology wasn't a strategy or deceit. It was a statement. We often think language shapes feeling, but in truth, the nervous system writes the first draft. The throat, the lungs, the diaphragm, the tilt of the chin, these are the original syntax of fear and safety. When dysregulation enters, language follows suit. The reflex to repair polyvagal theory describes 4 primary survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. While fight mobilizes to confront the threat, flight seeks distance, and freeze halts all movement, fawn moves toward, it appeases, soothes, placates. For those shaped by unpredictable environments, fawning becomes second nature. Apology is its most fluent dialect. In conflict, the fawn reflex reads others' emotions faster than its own, scanning for cues of disappointment or danger. A sigh becomes a siren, a pause a peril. Before thought arrives, the tongue softens, tone lifts, and the word slips free. Sorry. The nervous system perceives discord not as an opportunity, but as a risk. The reflex to repair is not moral but biological, a bid to restore connection at any cost. I remember noticing how often this reflex appeared in my early adult life. Someone would frown or go quiet, and I'd feel the impulse not to understand, but to apologize. It wasn't about responsibility, it was about reassurance. I wasn't repairing harm, I was soothing threat, theirs and mine. This is the essence of the apology loop. Language repurposed from communication to containment. When maturity meets reflex, there's a distinct moment in emotional development when awareness catches up to habit. For me, it came with discomfort, realizing that sorry no longer meant what I intended. Some apologies carried truth, others carried tension. In younger years, I mistook the reflex for compassion. I thought being first to apologize meant being strong enough to own my part. But reflex has no reflection. It seeks relief, not repair. True maturity arrived when I could pause long enough to ask, what am I apologizing for? Sometimes the answer was clear: a misstep, a harsh word, a lapse of attention. Other times, there was only unease, the sense that someone's silence needed filling. It took time to distinguish guilt from empathy, responsibility from fear. Maturity reframes apology from appeasement to accountability. It asks not, how quickly can I end discomfort? But what truth needs to be spoken for connection to heal? The body's confession: every system tells its story. Watch a person apologize, and you'll see the anatomy of emotion unfold. Shoulders drop, gaze lowers, voice softens. Sometimes the chest caves inward, breath shortens, and a posture of submission rather than sincerity. The vagus nerve, which governs tone, heart rate, and facial expression, translates emotion into sound. A genuine apology carries a slow rhythm, even breath, open gaze, cues of ventral vagal engagement, signaling safety. The nervous system is an instrument of discernment. By trusting its resonance, we navigate relationships with clarity rather than suspicion. Authentic repair sounds and feels coherent, tone, pace, gaze, posture aligned. When those elements converge, even a few words suffice. The body believes before the mind. The language beneath language. Every state has its grammar. Fight speaks in sharp syllables, flight in scattered clauses, freeze in silence, fawn in softness. Recognizing these dialects transforms communication. In a fawn apology, syntax often contracts: I just, I think, I guess, I'm sorry, but each phrase dilutes authority, signaling submission. By contrast, regulated speech uses declaratives: I see, I understand, I take responsibility. The shift is subtle yet seismic, from pleading to presents. Learning this language begins with listening inward. Which words accompany your tension? Which emerge when grounded? Over time, the body teaches its own linguistics. Reflection prompt. The apology loop, viewed through the lens of the state, is less a flaw than a map, tracing the routes we've traveled to find safety. Each sorry marks a waypoint between fear and freedom. By observing rather than condemning these reflexes, we create space for new patterns to form. So the next time you feel that impulse, the quick breath, the soft tone, the word on your tongue, pause. Ask gently, what am I protecting right now? If it's peace born of truth, speak. If it's safety born of fear, breathe. Either way, you've already begun the work, turning reflex into reflection, survival into sovereignty. Mirror linguistic decode. Phrases that program guilt language begins as imitation. Long before we form opinions, we absorb atmospheres, tones, phrases, patterns that repeat like background music. These repetitions don't merely shape how we speak, they script who we become. The echo chamber of early words. In the apology loop, many of these scripts center around guilt. Not moral guilt, the healthy compass that steers us toward repair, but chronic guilt. The felt sense of wrongness that attaches to identity, not action. It begins with small corrections, often well intended. Say it properly. Stop crying. Don't upset them. You should know better. Each phrase carries an implicit message. Your instinct is flawed. Your voice is risky. Your emotion is excessive. Spoken repeatedly, these commands migrate from external guidance to internal governance. They become the soundtrack of self-censorship, a linguistic conscience whispering, be smaller, be softer, be safe. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis suggests that language shapes perception, that the words available to us determine how we conceptualize reality. If our early lexicon equates expression with error, then selfhood becomes synonymous with guilt. Every feeling demands permission. Every truth requires apology. I've known this echo intimately. Even as an adult, moments of tension could awaken the old phrase, don't make a fuss, don't get it wrong. They'd rise unbidden, as if borrowed from another voice lodged somewhere in my chest. These weren't memories, they were reflexes, linguistic ghosts replaying ancestral caution, correction and control. To decode these phrases, we must look at their purpose. Correction is not inherently harmful. Structure can nurture safety, but when correction becomes control, language morphs from mirror to muzzle. Don't talk back often means don't question authority. It teaches obedience over inquiry. For a developing nervous system, the lesson is clear. Curiosity invites punishment. Silence preserves belonging. Stop crying translates to your emotions are too much. The child learns that regulation means repression. Tears become threats to attachment, so they dry them early, not from resilience, but from fear of rejection. Say it properly shifts expression into examination. Speech becomes a test, not a tool. The child internalizes perfectionism. Language must impress, not reveal. Over the years, these phrases construct a worldview where self-expression feels unsafe, and apology becomes the toll we pay for honesty. The adult, still fluent in these scripts, anticipates correction even in safe relationships. They apologize before the reprimand arrives. Guilt as grammar. Every culture carries a moral syntax, unspoken rules of who may speak, how and when. In guilt-conditioned families, the prevailing grammar pairs I with should, must, or sorry. The vocabulary of agency shrinks, modal verbs replace declaratives. Linguistically, this reflects learned submission. Phrases like I just wanted to, I think maybe, I'm sorry but, serve as softeners, cushioning the speaker's presence. The goal isn't clarity but palatability. When I began observing my own language, I saw these softeners everywhere. Emails, conversations, even texts carried apologies disguised as politeness. Beneath each was a question. Is it safe to be direct? This is the legacy of guilt as grammar, the nervous system translating fear into syntax. The mismatch of intention and reception. A striking paradox emerges. Those conditioned to over-apologize often hold deep empathy, yet their sincerity can be mistrusted. Why? Because chronic guilt distorts congruence. The body carries tension, even when the words carry remorse. Recipients sense the dissonance and doubt the authenticity. I've stood in this gap, feeling genuine sorrow, yet watching it misread as manipulation. In earlier years, that misalignment bred frustration. I'm trying. Why can't they see it? Now I recognize it as a state issue, not a moral one. My tone was tight, breath shallow. The body still braced for rejection. The apology, though honest, vibrated with fear. This is the irony of the apology loop. The more we strive to prove sincerity, the more strain enters the signal. Authenticity isn't amplified through effort, it's transmitted through ease. Maturity invites a new calibration, sincerity expressed through stillness, not performance. The nervous system no longer pleads. It states, the words slow, the breath deepens, and truth becomes audible again. The mirror of maturity growing through apology requires distinguishing guilt from growth. Guilt says I am wrong. Growth says I did wrong and I can do better. The first imprisons, the second evolves. In my younger years, I cycled through guilt without guidance. I'd apologize, promise change, yet repeat patterns. Sincerity alone couldn't rewrite behavior. Real transformation began when accountability met action. When sorry expanded into this is how I'll repair. Still, not every apology found acceptance. Some met walls of distrust, others vanished into silence. For a time I internalized those rejections as proof of inadequacy. Now I see them as reflections of readiness, the other person's capacity to receive, not my failure to deliver. A genuine apology is an invitation, not a demand. It offers a connection, but cannot compel it. Understanding this freed me from the loop of chasing forgiveness. My role is integrity. Theirs is openness. This shift marked a new maturity, measuring apology not by outcome, but by congruence. Generational linguistics. The phrases we inherit rarely start with cruelty. They are often survival codes passed down through lineage. A parent raised in scarcity learns to equate obedience with safety. Their corrections, though stern, aim to secure the child's acceptance within an unforgiving world. But what preserves one generation can constrain the next. The child, raised in relative safety, absorbs archaic caution as identity. They carry fear designed for environments that no longer exist. Breaking these cycles demands compassion. To decode our linguistic inheritance, we must see not only the wounds it caused, but the intentions behind it. Stop crying might have meant, I can't bear your pain. Don't talk back might have meant, silence keeps us safe. By translating these phrases through empathy, we loosen their grip. The goal isn't blame, but understanding. Rewriting the message while honoring the history. Reframing the inner dialogue awareness alone is not liberation. The phrases live on in internal monologue, automatic responses during stress. You should have known. Don't upset them. Say sorry. To rewire them, we must engage language consciously, offering new scripts in real time. When the old reflex whispers be smaller, respond with I'm safe to speak. When guilt arises without cause, I can hold this moment without apology. Each reframe signals the nervous system. Safety has evolved. The threat is past. Expression is allowed. Over time, these new phrases build a living lexicon, a personal NSL, nervous system language, tailored to regulation. Neuroplasticity supports this practice. Every intentional rewording strengthens pathways of self-trust. The tongue learns to follow truth rather than fear. The listener within apology is dialogue, even when spoken inwardly. Many of us owe ourselves apologies for overexertion, self-doubt, silence. Yet the same guilt that fuels external sorrows often withholds internal forgiveness. Listening within means allowing remorse to mature into restoration. It's not self-blame, but self-belonging. Acknowledging harm without collapsing into shame. I've learned to say, I'm sorry I didn't protect you sooner, to the younger self who over-apologized for survival, and then to follow it with, you're safe to speak now. These are not affirmations but reconciliations, nervous system truces between past and present. The freedom to disagree. A healthy apology culture includes the right not to apologize when unnecessary. This boundary often feels radical to the over-apologizer. Refusing unearned guilt can trigger anxiety. The body anticipates withdrawal or reprisal. Yet each instance of standing firm teaches resilience. Not every difference is a wrongdoing. Disagreement is not disrespect. Boundaries are not betrayal. This truth unfolds gradually. The more the system experiences safe disagreement, moments where honesty doesn't sever connection, the more apology returns to its rightful purpose. Repair, not reassurance. Reflection. Translating survival into safety phrases like don't talk back or stop crying were once commands. Now they are clues. Each point leads to an earlier state, a child managing emotion through conformity. By decoding them, we reclaim authorship. Which phrases still echo when you try to speak your truth? Whose voice do they belong to? What new sentence could replace them? One your body believes. Language, when mirrored consciously, becomes medicine. Every rephrase is a neural negotiation, shifting from appeasement to authenticity. You're not erasing history. You're updating translation, rewriting survival into safety, obedience into ownership, guilt into grace. In the next part, we'll explore how reframing specific phrases, from stop crying to you're feeling a lot, I'm here, can transform physiology itself, turning apology into alignment and guilt into groundedness. Mirror linguistic decode. What correction teaches us. Correction as an early mirror. Every child learns language through repetition, not just of words, but of responses. Each time we speak, the feedback we receive tells us something about what's welcome, what's risky, and what must be hidden. Correction is meant to refine expression, but it often shapes identity. When I first began to explore how language and the nervous system entwine, I realized that many of my own formative lessons didn't just teach grammar, they taught safety codes. Phrases like don't talk back, stop crying, or say it properly were more than guidance. They were embedded messages about how to exist. Don't talk back told me that autonomy could be dangerous. Stop crying implied emotion was an error. Say it properly suggested that expression was a test to be passed. Each phrase contained a philosophy about value, control, and belonging. They became part of my internal lexicon, rules my body followed long after my mind forgot where they came from. The body learns before the brain. I used to think language was purely cognitive, a matter of logic and learning. But the body listens first. Tone, pitch, breath, and posture carry meaning long before words do. The nervous system, tuned for survival, decodes these signals in real time. Threat or safety, acceptance or rejection. So when a voice said, stop crying, it wasn't the literal meaning that cut deepest. It was the tone of dismissal, the closing of space around vulnerability. My body didn't hear discipline, it heard danger. Those moments don't just create discomfort, they script reflexes. The next time emotion rises, the jaw tightens, breath shortens, and the impulse to hide or apologize surfaces before thought. The body remembers the lesson. Expression equals exposure. Over time, that memory turns into a mannerism. It shapes the syntax of the self. We learn to soften statements mid-sentence, apologize for honesty, or revise feelings before they're fully voiced. Correction becomes self-censorship. Growing up fluent in sorry, by the time I reached adulthood, Sorry had become a second language. It appeared everywhere, before opinions, after emotions, inside pauses. I apologized when I was late, when I was early, when I wasn't sure how someone felt. It wasn't manipulation. It was management, a nervous system seeking harmony in any way it could. In my younger years, I believed an apology was the hallmark of integrity. And to some extent it was. It meant I cared about impact, about the emotional footprint I left on others. But I began to notice a pattern. The more I said sorry, the less meaningful it became. The word, though sincere, had started to function as a shield, something I used to preempt rejection rather than express reflection. It took me years to realize that an apology isn't always a resolution. Sometimes it's a reflex, and a reflex, no matter how well-intentioned, can't transform a dynamic until awareness enters the equation. When sincerity isn't seen, there were moments when I offered a genuine apology, slower breath, grounded tone, clear intent, and still the other person couldn't accept it. They'd look at me as though I were performing. I could feel the wall go up before they even spoke. At first I panicked. I thought perhaps I'd miscommunicated, chosen the wrong words, failed to sound convincing. So I'd explain, repeat, intensify, but no amount of verbal precision could reach someone whose body still anticipated harm. Their nervous system, shaped by its own history, wasn't listening for meaning. It was scanning for danger, and if my face, tone, or timing resembled a past hurt, their defenses rose automatically. My sincerity couldn't override their state. That was a humbling realization, that even the most authentic remorse can't always land if the listener's body isn't ready to receive it. Apology, I learned, is not a performance to perfect, but a resonance to co-create. And sometimes, resonance is impossible until regulation returns. The maturity of meaning. In earlier years, I mistook fluency for maturity, thinking that being articulate, measured, or quick to admit fault meant I was emotionally evolved. But true maturity, I've come to see, isn't in how well we say sorry. It's in how deeply we embody it. Change, not charm, is the proof of remorse. Words open the door, but behavior keeps it open. When I started pairing apology with action, listening differently, pausing in conflict, and demonstrating reliability, relationships began to transform. I was no longer asking to be believed. I was offering evidence. Yet even then, some people couldn't update their perception. They still saw the old version of me, the one who apologized but didn't shift. It's confronting when you evolve faster than someone else's memory of you. But that too is part of repair, accepting that trust takes time, and that time is measured not in days, but in repeated congruence, the cost of one-sided responsibility. There's a fatigue that sets in when apology becomes one-sided, when we keep accepting blame for relational dynamics we didn't create alone. I've been there, humbling myself repeatedly, decoding old phrases. I no longer hear commands. I hear context. Each one reveals a worldview, a nervous system trying to maintain control in the only language it knew. Now when I notice myself self-correcting, I pause and ask, whose voice am I echoing? If the answer is an old authority, I breathe, ground, and rewrite. The new line might sound like, it's safe to express. Emotion is sensory data, not danger. Authenticity matters more than elegance. Each reframe replaces suppression with permission, perfectionism with presence, regulation as the new fluency. What I understand now is that communication doesn't begin with vocabulary, it begins with the state. When I'm regulated, my language reflects coherence, slower cadence, steadier tone, and more precise meaning. When I'm dysregulated, even perfect phrasing distorts. My voice rushes, sentences tangle, and intention gets lost in urgency. That's why every reframe must start in the body. Before I speak, I notice, is my jaw tight? Is my chest open? Can I breathe fully? My voice is the nervous system's accent. It reveals what logic can't conceal. Fluency, then, isn't about finding the right words. It's about becoming the right state. Once my body speaks safety, my sentences follow suit. From correction to compassion, every phrase I once absorbed as control now invites curiosity. What was this sentence trying to protect me from? What fear shaped its formation? When I listen this way, I can honor the intention without carrying the injury. Don't talk back, men. I'm afraid of losing authority. Stop crying. I don't know how to hold your pain. Say it properly, men. I need order to feel safe. Understanding that doesn't excuse harm, but it restores compassion for others and for myself. These were human attempts at regulation, passed down through language. My task is not to perpetuate them, but to translate them into forms that heal. The reflex beneath the reframe. Every reframe I practice today is built on the awareness of an older reflex, one shaped by attachment, guilt, and hyper-attunement to others' states. My body learned early that harmony depended on my humility, that love was maintained through apology, and that safety required self-blame. These patterns didn't vanish with insight. They softened through recognition. In the next element, psychological insight, the science of self-blame, will unpack what sat beneath those instincts. Anxious Fawn conditioning, internalized guilt, mirror neuron empathy that confused care with control, and cognitive distortions that turned every rupture into personal failure. Because healing, I've discovered, isn't about silencing the sorry. It's about teaching it where it truly belongs. Psychological insight. The science of self-blame. Long before I understood theory, I felt the tug of self-blame in my body. Whenever tension surfaced, a sigh, a silence, an unread message, something in me whispered, "What did you do wrong?" That whisper traveled faster than reason. The body attempted to secure safety through submission. If I could locate fault inside myself, I might restore order outside. Over-apology wasn't about guilt alone. It was a survival strategy. Sorry became the quickest path back to connection, even when I hadn't caused the rupture. The reflex that spoke first. Looking back, I see a nervous system trained to associate harmony with self-erasure. Blame myself, therefore, reduced the threat, which led to an earned belonging. It worked often enough to feel logical, yet each repetition shrank authenticity a little further. Understanding why this pattern formed became essential. Otherwise, every insight about language would remain trapped inside an unexamined reflex. Attachment theory. Lover's conditional calm attachment theory offered the first clue. In anxious fawn conditioning, affection arrives when the caretaker is appeased. The child learns proximity follows placation. My early environment didn't require perfection, but it prized peace. If adults were stressed, I softened. If they withdrew, I hurried to soothe. Over time, I conflated love with compliance. That template followed me into adulthood. When conflict appeared, my body equated difference with danger. I'd apologize quickly, not because I believed I'd failed, but because I feared disconnection. The gesture looked generous, yet beneath it pulsed anxiety. If I take the blame, you'll stay close. Maturity reframed this dynamic. Secure bonds don't hinge on one party absorbing all responsibility. They rest on mutual regulation. Real love doesn't require self-condemnation to maintain proximity. But the nervous system clings to familiar choreography until new experiences rewrite expectation. Each relationship that tolerated honest disagreement helped loosen the link between conflict and catastrophe. The superego's trial. I cause others pain. Freud's old word superego still captures a modern feeling. That inner prosecutor listing charges before evidence. Mine was meticulous. You should have known. You disappointed them. You're the reason they're upset. It mistook empathy for omnipotence. This internal tribunal was formed through countless micro-corrections. A frown here, a sharp, "Why would you do that?" there. Each implied I was the source of others' discomfort. Eventually, I stopped distinguishing impact from intent. Every ripple looked like proof of wrongdoing. Therapeutically, naming this process mattered. The superego thrives in abstraction. Specificity disarms it. Instead of "I ruin everything," I began asking, "What exactly happened and what part is mine?" Half the time, the answer was smaller than the feeling. Precision turned punishment into proportion. Mirror neurons and hyper-attunement. Some bodies read emotion like braille, a subtle shift in tone, a glance away, and my system flared with alarm. Neuroscience offers one lens. Mirror neurons, the brain cells that echo observed states. For highly attuned people, these circuits amplify empathy, but also contagion. Another's tension can register as personal fault. In practice, this meant I often felt guilty before facts emerged. Someone sighed, and I supplied a narrative. They're disappointed in me. The sensation was convincing. Physiological resonance felt like moral evidence. Only later did I learn to pause and separate perception from projection. I feel their unease, but it isn't necessarily about me. This skill, differentiated empathy, became central to NSL. To sense without absorbing, to witness without owning, is advanced regulation. My mirror neurons can inform compassion, but they no longer dictate confession. Cognitive distortions, the mind's shortcuts to shame. When the body braces, the mind scrambles for certainty. 4 distortions kept me looping in apology. 1. Personalization, assuming every negative outcome stems from my action. 2. Mind reading, presuming knowledge of another's judgment. 3. Catastrophizing, forecasting rejection as inevitable. 4. Emotional reasoning, because I feel guilty, I must be guilty. Cognitive therapy reframed these as habits, not truths. I began catching them mid-sentence. They haven't replied. There could be many reasons. Silence is sensory data-less. They looked upset. Upset isn't proof of my offense. I feel terrible. Unknown feeling to fact. Each correction was small but cumulative. Thought by thought, the narrative shifted from "I am the cause" to "I am a participant." My story in practice. When sorry became a language, the theories came alive in live scenes. In my early 20s, I'd rush to apologize the moment disagreement surfaced. Partners praised my accountability, yet doubted my follow-through, rightly so. Words changed faster than habits. I was fluent in remorse, clumsy in repair. Later, self-work taught me to slow the sequence. Regulate first, reflect second, respond third. When conflict arose, I asked, am I apologizing to connect or to control the discomfort? If it was the latter, I waited. Sometimes the pause felt excruciating. Silence pressed against my old template. But holding ground without groveling re-educated my body. Connection can survive tension. Conversely, I encountered people whose apologies sounded perfect yet carried no shift. Their tone revealed haste, their patterns repetition. Feeling that dissonance clarified sincerity, both theirs and mine. Authentic repair hums at a different frequency. The body recognizes congruence before the brain tallies evidence. Mirror linguistic hypothesis. The mirror within the message. According to the mirror linguistic hypothesis, every utterance reflects the speaker's internal landscape. A chronic sorry is often a linguistic selfie of unworthiness, an evasive, a working model from reflex to responsibility. The movement from anxious apology to accountable repair unfolds in 4 stages. 1. Notice, sense the bodily cue, tight chest, racing words. 2. Name, identify the trigger without verdict. I feel the urge to fix. 3. Navigate, regulate first. Breathe, ground, delay response. 4. Negotiate. Speak once calm with specificity and action. Each loop rewires expectation. Safety no longer depends on self-blame, but on self-attunement. Mirroring self-compassion, replacing automatic blame required a new inner dialogue. Instead of "you've ruined it," I practiced, "you contributed, you can contribute differently." Impact matters, but so does intention. Repair is shared work. These weren't affirmations for comfort. They were syntax upgrades, grammatical shifts from permanence to possibility. Over time, they shaped a lexicon of mercy without abdication, boundaries, and the ethics of apology. Sometimes the most responsible act is restraint. If an apology will reinforce a false narrative, casting me as the sole culprit to preserve someone else's equilibrium, silence is integrity. I now ask 3 questions before speaking. 1. Is this my impact to own? 2. Will this apology invite growth or enable avoidance? 3. Can my behavior, not just my words, demonstrate repair? When answers clarify, language follows. Boundaries aren't barriers. They're the grammar of respect. Integration. Knowledge into nervous system intellect alone can't dissolve reflex. So I pair insight with somatic rehearsal, noticing triggers, grounding, revoicing in real contexts. Each successful cycle, pausing instead of appeasing, articulating specifics, following through, deposits new evidence in the body's archive. Eventually, the default sentence changes from I'm sorry to I'm steady, I'm learning, I'm here. Over-apology reinterpreted, I see now that over-apology was never a weakness. It was empathy misdirected inward, a sophisticated attempt at safety using the tools available at the time. Understanding its architecture, attachment fear, superego guilt, mirrored distress, and cognitive bias transforms shame into appreciation. The reflex once meant I care enough to carry it all. The revision means I care enough to carry my part, and trust others to carry theirs. Repatterning the reflex insight is the map. Practice is the movement. Knowing why I apologize too quickly matters less than training my body to pause, breathe, and choose new language. In the next element, integration practice. Repatterning the reflex, we'll walk through practical tools. Journaling phrases that once bound me, rewriting them in NSL, and embedding these reframes through real-time rehearsal. Each iteration builds a living lexicon, not to erase history, but to translate survival into safety. Integration practice. Repatterning the reflex insight alone doesn't rewrite reflex. I could trace every psychological root of my over-apology, yet still feel my mouth form the word sorry before I'd registered a thought. Awareness is the map. Practice is the path. Repatterning begins where theory ends, in the live moment where language meets breath. From knowing to doing, the nervous system learns through repetition, not revelation. Every time I pause before an unnecessary apology, I'm offering my body an updated lesson. You don't have to shrink to stay safe. This isn't intellectual restraint. It's embodied literacy. The aim isn't to suppress speech, but to synchronize language with truth, words and state in agreement. So integration isn't about perfection. It's about giving the body fresh evidence, moment by moment, that authenticity can coexist with connection. Step 1. Awareness in real-time change begins with noticing. Throughout the day, I observe when sorry appears on my lips. The context matters less than the sensation preceding it. A tight chest, shallow breath, or subtle wince. These cues reveal that an apology is functioning as armor. When I sense the impulse, I label it gently. That's the reflex. No judgment, no suppression. The act of naming recruits the prefrontal cortex, inviting curiosity over criticism. Sometimes I still say the word, that's fine. The learning lies in noticing before, during, or after. Over time, the interval lengthens. Awareness enters earlier, and choice becomes possible. Step 2. The pause practice. After awareness comes space. I borrow a simple NSL technique, the 2-breath pause. First breath. Inhale through the nose, feel the ribs widen. Second breath. Exhale softly, lengthening the out-breath by 2 counts. That small extension signals the vagus nerve. We're safe enough to reflect. Often, by the end of the second exhale, urgency subsides and clarity emerges. Do I still need to apologize? Or would a different phrase align better with my intent? This 2-breath window is the hinge between compulsion and choice. In it, language can shift from reflexive to responsive. Step 3. Rewriting the phrase. Once space opens, I reframe. The goal isn't to delete sorry from the vocabulary, but to align words with meaning. Some examples from my living lexicon. Sorry for being late, to thank you for waiting. Sorry, I just wanted to add, to I'd like to add something. Sorry if this is silly, to I'm thinking aloud, tell me what you see. Each substitution carries a different nervous system signature. The reframed versions expand posture, steady tone, and a firm presence. They signal equality rather than appeasement. I treat these reframes as experiments, not scripts. Context guides choice. What matters is the felt sense. Does my body open or contract as I speak? Step 4. Journaling the echo evening reflection consolidates the day's lessons. I recorded mental moments that triggered an apology. 1. What happened? 2. What did I feel? 3. What did I say or wish to say? 4. What alternative phrase could align with safety now? For example, event, a friend frowned during my story. Feeling, heat in chest, urge to apologize for talking too much. Reframe, I got excited, I'd love to hear your view too. Writing isn't about critique, it's a dialogue with the nervous system. Seeing patterns on paper reveals or recognizing them through mental reflection, and how often language bends toward self-blame. Over weeks I notice shifts, fewer reflex apologies, more collaborative phrasing. The page becomes a mirror of progress. Step 5. Somatic rehearsal language repatterning lives in the mouth and muscles. I practice aloud when calm, so the phrases are available under stress. Standing tall, shoulders relaxed, I speak each new sentence slowly, feeling vibration in the chest rather than constriction in the throat. We can use a mirror to observe micro-expressions. Does the face tighten when asserting? Do the eyes dart when they own space? The goal isn't performance but congruence, facial, vocal, and physiological harmony. This rehearsal echoes exposure therapy. Simulate the trigger in safety, encode a new response. When real tension arises, the body recognizes the script and stays online. Step 6. Embodied regulation in dialogue during live conversations. Anchor in 3 physical cues. Feet grounded, reminding ourselves to occupy rightful space. Shoulders soft, signaling openness, not defense. Voice low and slow, prosody of calm authority. These signals communicate safety before words do. When tone aligns with intention, even challenging truths land gently. Apology, when necessary, becomes concise and credible. I see how that affected you. Here's what I'll change. No self-condemnation, no excess cushioning, just regulated ownership. Step 7. Repetition and reward. The nervous system updates through consistency. Each successful reframe, each withheld reflex, deposits evidence. Authenticity didn't rupture the connection. I reinforce these wins with micro-celebrations, a deep exhale, and a quiet thank you to the body for learning. This positive feedback loop rewires association. Truth equals safety, not submission equals safety. Gradually, the urge to apologize preemptively fades, replaced by a steadier confidence in mutual repair. Integrating with others' practices become culture through conversation. I share this process with close friends, explaining why I'm slowing down, apologies, and inviting them to do the same. Mutual awareness prevents misreading pauses as indifference. It turns growth into collaboration. In professional settings, modeling precise accountability often softens group dynamics. One person's regulated language can entrain others, a ripple of coherence across a team, a family, a classroom. Reflection prompt. The repatterning journal tonight. Try this short exercise. Step 1. Recall one apology from today, or the last time you apologized. We're sorry. Step 2. What was I truly seeking? Connection, approval, safety, or repair? Step 3. Write 2 sentences. The one you said, almost said, the one you'd regulated yourself would choose now. Read them aloud. Notice bodily response. The difference you feel is the learning. Do this daily for a week. By the 7th entry, patterns surface, phrases of fear, words of worth. Collect the new sentences. They form the seed of your personal NSL lexicon. Repatterning apology isn't about becoming less kind. It's about becoming more congruent. Compassion divorced from boundaries corrodes itself. Each pause, breath, and reframe is an act of reparenting, teaching the inner child that love need not be purchased with self-blame. Now when I say sorry, it carries weight without collapse. It lands in the body as truth, not tremor. The nervous system recognizes sincerity because tone, posture, and intention speak in unison. From sorry to steady, every practice we've explored, the pause, the breath, the reframe, has been about one thing: reclaiming balance between care and clarity. We've been learning not just how to speak, but how to stay. Because the journey from reflex to responsibility isn't about erasing sorry, it's about transforming it, from a shield we hide behind into a bridge we stand upon, from a tremor of fear into a tone of truth. Apology, when rooted in regulation, no longer bends us out of shape, it brings us back into alignment. The voice steadies, the breath deepens, and the word sorry begins to mean what it always hoped to. I see you, I see myself, and I'm ready to meet you here, honestly. So as we move toward our final reflection, we'll gather these threads, safety, sincerity, state and speech, into one closing whisper. We'll trace the evolution from sorry as submission to sorry as sincerity, from appeasement to alignment, from guilt to grace. Because your voice isn't safer because it's smaller. It's safer because it's honest. In the final part, closing whisper, From sorry to steady, we'll bring this episode to rest and look ahead to You Never Listen, our next exploration into projection, conflict, and defensive dialogue, where we'll learn how to hold our truth when echoes turn into arguments. From sorry to steady, the last echo, there's a moment that arrives quietly, not with triumph, but with relief. It's when you hear yourself say sorry, and for the first time in a long time, it lands right. The word doesn't tremble or rush, it sits in the chest like a small truth, solid and steady. No panic in the breath, no shrinking in the spine, just acknowledgement, spacious and sincere. That's the point we've been moving toward, not the erasure of apology, but its evolution. The journey from sorry as survival to sorry as sincerity. The difference is state. One collapses, the other stands tall. This closing whisper isn't about perfection. It's a pause to honor the arc we've traveled, the old reflexes we outgrew, the self-blame we've translated into understanding, the breaths we took instead of rushing to appease. We're not just learning to speak differently, we're learning to be different when we speak. From submission to sincerity, in the early patterns, sorry was submission, an instinct to fold before the storm had even formed. It was the nervous system's offering to keep the peace. If I'm small enough, soft enough, sorry enough, maybe I'll be safe. But safety earned through disappearance is never real. Over time, the body tires of bending, muscles ache from carrying guilt that isn't theirs. Voice cords strain from singing harmonies to songs they never chose. Sincerity, by contrast, requires presence. To speak an honest apology, we must remain intact. The tone lowers, the words slow, the eyes meet rather than dart. We're no longer pleading for permission to exist. We're participating in repair. A true apology doesn't cost identity. It clarifies it. From appeasement to alignment, appeasement is about control. Alignment is about coherence. The appeaser scans others for cues. The aligned person scans inward for truth. When I apologized out of fear, I was managing perception, trying to sculpt safety through compliance. The moment someone frowned, I bent toward them like a plant chasing light. But that light was conditional, and it burned. Alignment feels different. It begins with breath, shoulders down, chest open. The apology that rises from this posture is simple. I see the impact and I care enough to change. No excess language, no self-condemnation. The phrase aligns intent, tone, and action. The body knows it's true. The nervous system exhales. Each time we replace appeasement with alignment, we rewrite the story our voice tells about us. The listener may or may not mirror that steadiness, but our own physiology registers the shift. We remain whole. From guilt to grace, guilt has its place. It signals that empathy is alive. But guilt left unchecked grows moss. It clings heavy and damp, turning care into captivity. Grace, on the other hand, is movement. It steps forward. It allows repair without rehearsal of punishment. In grace, I can say, I see the harm and I hold the hope that follows. I can accept responsibility without kneeling in shame. My apology becomes a gesture of faith in myself, in the relationship, in our shared capacity to evolve. Grace is not softness that excuses, it's strength that restores. It holds truth and tenderness in the same breath. When guilt dissolves into grace, sorry stops being a scar and becomes a seed. The nervous system's new song. The body learns through pattern, not promise. Every time we offer a steady apology, voiced low, paced slow, backed by action, we compose a new melody in the nervous system. Once, sorry came with constriction, shallow breath, hunched shoulders, and eyes lowered. Now, with practice, it arrives with expansion. The breath deepens, the spine lengthens, the gaze softens. The word hums with coherence. We're retraining prosody, the music of our voice, to carry calm instead of collapse. In NSL, this is fluency, tone, tempo, and truth aligned. The voice becomes an instrument of safety, for self first, then others. Because regulation is contagious. A sincere apology steadies not only the speaker, but the space between. Reflection, the honest voice. As we close, I invite you to look back, not for judgment, but for gratitude. Think of a time when your apology came from fear. What did your body do? Did you rush, shrink, over-explain? Thank you for joining me in this reflection, for slowing down with your language, for listening not just to words, but to the body behind them. Mirror talk is not a classroom. It's a mirror, a space to notice, to unlearn, to rephrase the reflexes that once shaped our sense of safety. Remember, we're not chasing perfection, we're practicing presence. The goal isn't to apologize less, but to apologize truly, to speak from the center of integrity rather than the edges of fear. So as you move through your week, notice, when sorry rises, what state is it serving? Fear or integrity? Control or connection? You don't need to have the answer instantly. Awareness is the first rewrite. The rest unfolds breath by breath because true safety is mutual, not purchased through guilt. And language is the bridge between what we've survived and how we wish to live. Looking ahead in the next episode, You Never Listen will explore the sound of conflict, how projection and defensive dialogue create static between intention and interpretation. We'll decode what happens when conversations become collisions, and how to find clarity when echoes grow louder than understanding. We'll ask, what's truly being heard beneath accusation? How can we listen beyond defense? And how do we stay regulated when words become weapons? If this episode helped you recognize your reflexes, the next will help you reclaim your resonance. Until then, speak gently, breathe deeply, and remember, your voice is not a plea for permission. It's a presence. You've been listening to Mirror Talk, the language of the nervous system. I'm James Miller.